You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, everybody, welcome to Jackson with Jackson, number 43, Creationist Quotemines. I am here, of course, with Jackson Wheat. Jackson, how you doing?
I am Jackson.
That's what, yep, that's the requirement to be here for Jackson with Jackson. Also,
and I went to the zoo.
Nice. Well, first, we have a Dapper's a Professional drink because I was setting stuff up today, and I forgot to leave the opening at the very top of the layer stack, so take a drink. Delicious. I've got rum and cola right here.
I've got a Gatorade.
Nice. I've also got a blister. So today I was cooking, and I decided to move the handle of a pot away, and that pot handle was very, very hot. And so now I've got a red shiny spot on my thumb, and it's got a little bump. It's kind of pale.
Well, if you come over here, I will give it a kiss to make it all better.
I gotta be honest with you, Jackson. As tempting as that might be, I am not going all the way to Louisiana just for a medically ineffective treatment for a minor burn.
I will meet you halfway. We can meet in Texas. How about that?
I don't really want to be in Texas.
I was in Texas today.
If you come to Tucson,
okay,
there you go. Borgum 40 says, dinosaurs get blisters. Everybody gets blisters.
Yeah.
Did Dapper lose the regular drink counter graphic? So, technically, there is no such thing as the regular drink counter graphic. There were several text items that were in my OBS. Those are technically lost, I suppose, because I don't have that OBS install, and I'm not really going to try to dig through to figure out where my configuration files were for it and whatnot. But what is happening is that I have to slowly reestablish essentially everything that I had, which I am doing it sort of as I need it. And the Klingon drink counter was not a high priority for me. So for today, and I'm not sure for how long, I just don't have it. So, yeah. If you are wondering, we do have a super chat goal. So basically, if we can get to the 30 super chat in about 2 hours, we got a little bit less. I have some nerdy stuff that I might be working on. Well, I'm definitely working on that I will be able to talk more about.
Woo.
Otherwise, it stays a secret for probably a couple months or so. So, yeah. All right. So, all that preamble out of the way, Jackson, are you ready for us to talk about what we went over last time and give the drinking rules and then actually play some Charles Jackson video?
I am as ready as I will ever be.
Okay, that seems fair. All right. So, drinking rules. First of all, we are here to take a look at creationist nonsense. Tuesday streams are basically the lowest tier creationist nonsense that we can find. That's why we cover things like Kent Hovind, Raw Matt. Charles Jackson is a little bit more sophisticated than Kent Hovind or Raw Matt, but not by that much, surprisingly.
Not by much.
Yeah. Change the drink counter font to Comic Sans. I'll tell you what. If we meet the super chat goal, I will switch the font to Comic Sans. That'll be another goal thing right there. Y'all want the drink counter to be in Comic Sans? Let me actually make sure I can actually do it. Because I make this promise, and it turns out, oh, sorry, you can't. Let me see. Go to properties over there. Career went too far. Comic Sans, yeah, I can. Okay, there you go. All right, so I just lost my train of thought. Right. We're here to talk about Charles Jackson and his nonsense, and we have a drinking game that goes along with it. So, The first drink trigger that we already went over is Dapper's a professional. If I screw up the production of this show, then we will take a drink. Now, if the production is screwed up by something beyond my control, for instance, if my hardware decides to catch on fire, or YouTube just shuts down, or the internet is struck by lightning or something, then yeah, that's not on me. We don't take a drink for it.
Creationist in the wires.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe they'll fight the tiny little elephants that live in the wires. That's why you get kicked back if you get shocked. It's because one of the elephants kicked you.
Oh, that actually makes sense.
Yeah, see? It's called elephanticity. It is a rival theory of how electrical equipment works that is, in fact, fighting the good fight against the electrical establishment that wants you to believe in tiny little meaningless electrons that don't even have cute trunks. And they're actually there to trick you into not believing that God placed elephants inside of wires. That's, yep, so believe in the elephants. Anyway, yep, so that is Dapper's Professional. We also have a few other drink triggers. First of all, if Charles Jackson says something that's just too stupid and we need to cool our brains off a little bit, we will take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Charles Jackson actually gets something correct. So most of the stuff he says is going to be somewhere between so brain-numbingly stupid that I need to drink myself into oblivion and correct. Most of it's going to be like in the incorrect, but not that brain-numbingly stupid. If he, however, gets it correct, then yeah, we'll take a drink. Now, it has to actually be him getting something correct on his own. He can't just be reading off of some slide that has a quotation from someone else who happens to be correct. It actually has to be a thought in his brain that is factually accurate. And then we'll take a drink for that. We'll also take a drink if Charles Jackson tells a story that didn't happen or a joke that didn't land. Now, that is a bit of a judgment call, of course. Humor is subjective, and I don't have access to, like, all of Charles Jackson's memories or to just, like, base level reality so that I can check on things like that. However, if it seems extremely far-fetched as a story, or just Jackson and I don't find it funny and we don't hear much reaction from the audience, then we'll call that either a story that didn't happen or a joke that didn't land. We'll also take a drink if Charles Jackson mentions that political party from Germany back in the 1930s and 40s that came to power, or their modern the modern adherence to their ideology. We'll take a drink for that. Now, it does not mean that he has to actually give us an example of Godwin's Law. Any mention is enough, because they always bring them up. We will also take a drink if Charles Jackson references a source. We check the source, and rather than supporting his contention, it actively contradicts it. Now, most creationists who cite sources will cite sources that do nothing to support their argument. That is not worth the Trojan source drink, which is what we call this. It has to actively contradict them. So it's sort of like the first law of Flurf, which is Flurf citations always contradict Flat Earth. It's a little bit milder, though, because every once in a while you get a creationist who will say something that, like, is either, like, not true but not important, or true but kind of trivial, and they'll have a source that kind of either backs that up or that just doesn't contradict it and doesn't have much to do with it. So it's a little bit weaker than Toon's first law of Flurfs. We'll also take a drink if Charles Jackson mixes up what we can know about the specimen Lucy with what we can know about any wider taxon to which she belongs. So, for instance, if he says, well, we don't know if Australopithecus could actually, hold tools because we don't have their hands because Lucy wasn't found with hands. Yeah, that's called an ad hominid. We get one of those per stream at maximum. We will also take a drink if either Jackson or I can successfully predict what Charles Jackson is going to say where it's not clear. And we will also be able to take drinks for a few reasons that you guys give us. So, for instance, if you super chat or membership milestone chat anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, we will take a drink. One of the fastest ways to make us take drinks, and which primarily is for me, right, because I'm the one who has some rum in here, is gifted memberships. If you give 5 memberships, I take 5 drinks. If you give 10, I drink 10 drinks. If you give 20, 20. If it gets to 30, I'm just going to finish what I have in this glass and go get another one. So there is that. Also, if you membership milestone chat or super chat anything with any of the kaiju emojis that we have, which include Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, we will take a drink for that. Also, if Mothra or Godzilla, come by audibly, we will take a drink. Doesn't always happen, but it does happen often enough. And yeah, it's a fun little sort of random thing. That is, in fact, a phone notification deal. So, yeah, there are a few people who know how to make it happen, and I ask that they exercise restraint with that power. So, if you don't know how to make that happen, that's okay. You're not supposed to. So, I think that has covered all of them. If I missed any, please let me know. You can tag me, you can super chat me. I don't really care either way. Before we get into it, though, Roshina, the facticity of cheese color for $4.99 says, you can tell a lot about a nerd/geek if you can distract them easily with font talk. Yeah, okay, that's fair. You got me. You got me. Let's not turn this into a discussion about kerning, though. Jackson, do you know what kerning is?
I don't think so.
You are better off for it, my friend.
All right.
So, like, Jackson, you ever read the Call of Cthulhu?
No, I sure haven't.
All right. It starts off...
I don't actually read fiction, believe it or not.
Interesting. Well, it starts out with a bit of a preamble, right? And it's all about how the most merciful thing in the world is the inability of humans to reliably connect the disparate aspects of their knowledge. Right?
Okay.
And how there are some things that are best left unknown.
Okay.
Kerning is one of those things for most people. You don't need to know about it.
Is this something I have to look up now?
No, don't.
Don't look it up. Okay.
No. Do you want your life to become immeasurably worse for no reason at all?
I mean, I am living in Trump's America, so, you know.
Do you want that to be worse?
I don't know.
Why would you add more things that are horrible to your plate? Naramda puts for $5.
I feel like this isn't a particularly horrible thing.
Yeah, that's because you don't know about it. You don't know what you don't know.
No, I'm reading about it right now, and I feel like this is...
Oh no, you decided to look into it, Jackson?
Well, I had to. I couldn't not do it.
In the chat for Jackson's sanity going forward. Sapphire, Science Nimby's Light, member for 36 months at the Amnio level, says, AIG is a sphinxter full of shaft Ds. Also, I just noticed I have a spooky Skelly Dapper badge now. Nice. Very cool. And I will take a drink. Thank you very much.
Dapper, that was a linguist joke is what that was. And I am not a linguist unlike you.
It's a typography joke, actually. There's a difference. And I am sorry. I'm so sorry, Jackson. Naronda puts for $5 says, there's an XKCD comic that advocates introducing kerning to people you hate. Yes. We need to sit Kent Hovind down and tell him all about kerning. Peggy Chase for $5 says, I never understood what's so important about kerning. Oh no. I will not be dragged into that conversation. You know what? Get behind me, Satan. Quoting the Bible at you. Get out of here with that. I never understood what's so important about kerning. Alright. I'm going to hit play on this after I go over what we were just talking about. So Charles Jackson has been just going through quote mine after quote mine from scientists who do not agree with him, by the way, in an effort to make it seem like evolution is a theory in crisis. You know, that old trope that creationists have been using for, what, like 40, 50 years now?
At least, yeah.
Yeah. And how many times has the crisis actually been noticed by anyone involved in any relevant field?
I can't actually think of any examples.
Yeah, same. Erachamian for $10 says, Kernet... Why, Erachamian? You know, you feel like people are... They like you and they support you. You know, they've been giving money to your Patreon. They're regular viewers. And then suddenly they just do this kind of a war crime activity here. Eric, I mean, you should be getting a call from Nuremberg. They're going to want to talk to you about this. This is ridiculous. All right. And so the most recent quote mine that we've been given is this one here by Roger Lewin, who gave this in 1982, which is always fun.
Very recent.
Yeah. Very like. it's hard to even comprehend the degree to which creationists cannot stay current with the literature. It's not. I don't even think it's just that they don't want to. I don't think they can. I think there's something fundamental that blocks them from doing it.
I think you're right, because in, like, Ken Hovind, all of his slides, I don't think he updates them, but if you like catch him on the fly on something, he'll just kind of like Google it, and like the broadest Wikipedia answer is what he'll give you, but he won't actually read like modern technical sources on it. He just reads like really ancient sources.
Yeah, and I just realized that the kerning in Arachamian's chat is that the RN is actually an M. Jeez, dude. What? I'm taking psychic damage right now. You supplied a psychic dot. Like, what the hell, man? Prixie Solus, dyslexic purple member for 15 months since at the Tetrapod level, says, kerning has driven me crazy before I knew the word. Yeah, you seem like someone who should get big into typography then. Almost said typology, that's different.
Yeah.
So here's the I'm going to read the quotation just so we have the context, and then we'll continue on. And I'm reading it primarily for those of you who have this on in the background while you clean, or cook, or do homework, or use the bathroom. And you aren't looking,
juggle.
Or juggle, sure, whatever. So this is from Roger Lewin in Science in 1982. Natural selection, ellipsis, can weed out some of the complexity and slow down the information decay that results in speciation. It may have a stabilizing effect, but it does not promote speciation. It is not a creative force, as many people have suggested. Now, the problem here, of course, is that no one has really ever suggested I don't know anyone who's actually suggested that natural selection is a creative force, right? It's not. It weeds out what's already there. The creative force is mutation. That's what ultimately adds new variation. And even if we go with things like, gene flow or horizontal gene transfer, those new genes that are entering still had to start with mutations. So, ultimately, when you dig right down to it, it all comes down to mutation being the source of new genetic variation, which is then acted on by various other forces like genetic drift and selection. So, yeah. And Charles Jackson, for some reason, thinks that by pulling apart different aspects of evolution and pointing out that on their own, this one aspect of evolution is insufficient to explain the entirety of evolutionary biology, that therefore that's a problem for evolutionary biology, right? It's sort of like saying, oh, hey, pancakes are impossible because I happen to notice that, flour, not a pancake. Eggs, not a pancake. Salt, not a pancake. Artificial vanilla flavoring, is what I tend to use, not a pancake. Baking powder, not a pancake. Just okay, yeah, but the thing is you mix them together, right? And then you get a pancake batter. And he's like, but even the pancake batter isn't a pancake, and neither is the stove. Yeah, dude, I get it. That doesn't mean pancakes are impossible. At no point does any of that make pancakes impossible.
RJ he terms this xenoslicing, which I don't know if any of you, I know Dapper you are, if your audience is familiar with the Zeno's paradox.
Yes.
Because he didn't have calculus, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say RJ likes to call that idea, that I don't know what you call it, that argument, that fallacy, whatever. Zeno's the xenoslicing, because you're preventing all of the parts from being put together. You're just keeping them all separated.
Yep. All right, so let's see. Rail got to Bella for $5 says, if I were a scientist, I'd try to mine the internal body parts of whatever creationist quote mined me. I am not going to endorse the organ harvesting of creationists, unless, of course, they are dead and organ donors. Or they volunteered to give up an organ, I donated a kidney or something. Then you can harvest that kidney if they donated. Meat Permits Tad for $2 says, I'm watching this while assembling a couch. Interesting.
Nice.
Well, I hope that goes well. What was the last piece of furniture I assembled? I think it's the chair I'm sitting
I did
on.
a bookshelf.
Oh, you know what? I also did a bookshelf recently. It might have been a bookshelf that was the most recent.
Nice.
Maybe. It's either that or the chair I'm on. I'm not sure. I don't remember the timeline super exactly. Yeah. So This chair was actually a gift from my wish list, and it was very nice because it was it helped relieve some back pain. It's a much nicer chair than the one I had previously, which had
Nice.
insufficient back support. So, yep. Anyway, here we go. Remember, we still need 25 super chats if you guys want to hear about the nerdy stuff that is in the works. I keep wanting to say maybe in the works. It's definitely in the works. You just don't get to know much about it until either it happens or we hit a super chat goal. Here we go.
See, a lot of people think that, natural selection is some kind of magic wand. A lizard needs to evolve wings and feathers and turn into a bird and fly, so evolution just magics it up. Natural selection just makes... Natural selection can't make anything. All it can do is select from what's already there.
Yeah, which, again, is not new. That fact goes all the way back to Darwin, right? Who couldn't account for the arrival of new variation, but who knew it wasn't natural selection. Like, this has not been a good argument since the late 1800s. It's one of the things addressed in Origin. Like, anyway, my unfinished kerning journey. Oh no. But does that say unfinished chemming journey? Is that what it does? I hate all of you. My unfinished chemming journey for $6.66 says, Hail Nero, Daps, and Good Jacks, and hail Pegajace for being the first to do the kerning super chat war crime. I hate everything now. That's it. We're shutting down the channel. This is the last stream ever. All right. It's been fun, everybody. We'll get out of here. Bye.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Beethoven, Ferrevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek von Mennen, Landon Knoll, Matt...
Okay, fine, we're back. I decided that maybe I should keep going with, my job.
Yeah,
that's probably a good idea. All right, here we go.
Next. Here's something very interesting. This is showing the frequency.
Oh, you know what? I'm taking a drink for the misuse of Moto Kimura by Sanford. We're going to talk about this graph. Give me a second. Yeah. Rail got to Butler for $5 says, maybe if Matt Powell didn't call evolution or natural selection sorcery, people wouldn't consider it magic. No, he's not to blame for that one. I mean, he's to blame for being such a dumbass, but he's not the one who originated the idea that natural selection is some kind of mysterious, mystical, magical thing. He's just repeating that. So, this is John Sanford's bastardization of a graph from the work of Moto Kimura. Moto Kimura was I'm not sure. Has he died? I think he has.
I have no idea if he's. I wouldn't be surprised because his work was in the 1960s. So
yeah,
I guess I wouldn't be.
He was already pretty old at that point, wasn't he?
He was. I mean, he was an adult, back then. So he might be dead. I have no idea. I can look it up.
Yeah, he died in 94. So yeah, no, he's
So yeah, there you go.
Okay, so Moto Kimura was a Japanese scientist who, along with a lot of help from his students, including what's the name of the woman?
Oh, Ota.
Ota, yeah.
Yeah, I forget her first. It's like Susuma Ota, I think was her.
Okay. Along with her, although he gets his name on most of the stuff because, well,
Susumu Ota, is that right? No. Well, Ota was the last name. I don't remember what her first name. I thought that was her first name.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, she was another big she was because he did neutral theory and she did nearly neutral theory, which was a slight variation on it. Yeah.
So they worked on this idea of neutral theory, which is basically talking about how parts of the genome that do not have any effect on fitness evolve, right? And they evolve by accumulating mutations at basically the background rate of mutations. And they basically, the whole idea about genetic drift and things like that, all of that kind of stuff is affected by neutral theory. It's also how we can build some of our most robust phylogenies by concentrating in neutral areas, because if you concentrate in areas where there's selection pressure, well, some of the similarities or differences might actually be more easily attributable to selection than just divergence times and whatnot. So, in his math, though, he came up with a distribution of fitness effects for mutations that he was going to consider that is similar to this, except he put nothing to the right, which is the positive selection. In fact, he put nothing to the right not because he didn't think that there were any positive beneficial mutations, but because even the slightest beneficial mutation would swamp his mathematical model because he couldn't get it to not be selected for too reliably. So he just had to pretend that there just weren't any in order to actually get his math to come up with a neutral theory that would stay neutral. Because once he introduced beneficial mutations, that's it. Selection took right over, no matter how he modeled it.
Even with massively larger amounts of neutral and deleterious variations, it's still
talking orders of magnitude.
Just swamp them easily.
So, John Sanford then took this idea and decided he was somehow being generous by pretending that this was a real fitness distribution curve and that there actually were beneficial mutations, but they only occurred in what he's calling the no selection zone. The no selection zone is basically the idea that there are some mutations whose effect is so minor that natural selection is more or less blind to them because the effects of chance swamp the fitness effects, right? So it's sort of like, let's say there was a mutation, and it meant that on average, members of the population that have that mutation have like 1/1,000,000th better reproductive success. Well, okay, that's great, but like, since most organisms don't have like offspring that survive to reproduce that are in like the millions, there's unlikely to be any appreciable effect from that, and that mutation is more likely to, either fix or go extinct via genetic drift than selection. It turns out, and if you want to see like all the math on this, I would suggest that you go over to Dr. Zach Hancock's page, that the no selection zone is actually minuscule in pretty much every real world example. Like trivially small, such that we really don't have to worry about the no selection zone in terms of population genetics. And in fact, that is a function of effective population size. The higher the effective population size is, the smaller the no selection zone is. So,
That's you get really like wacky. That's why with things like bacteria and archaea, which have these enormous population sizes, you have like very few like pseudogenes and things like that, things that are non-functional in their genome. Whereas for eukaryotes, you have these baroque genomes with like molecular fossils and transposons and all sorts of crazy stuff, because you have to have a very it has to be a very large like a selection coefficient for these things to get rid of them. They have to have a very large effect on the organism, or they just don't get noticed at all, basically. Because eukaryotes have such smaller population sizes.
So, Doc Don Hogg said, by the way, or said Hogue, I'm not sure, said, by the way, the embedded ad for me is for a free copy of the Messianic Prophecy Bible. It looks like it's one of the worst possible translations, but I'll need an expert's review. That sounds to me like it's a Bible produced by the so-called Messianic Jewish movement, which is Christians who like to basically grab a whole bunch of very much post-Christian Jewish rituals and then just perform them while pretending that those were what Jesus used to do, which is not how that works. Pro tip to everyone out there: modern Judaism is not the same as first century Second Temple Judaism. They're not the same thing. And because Jews today do it, doesn't mean Jesus did it. And because Jesus did it, also doesn't mean Jews today do it. So there you go. Anyway, let's keep going.
Of mutations, this is showing how extreme a mutation is. If it's so good that it gives a species an advantage, then it's kept.
That would be an individual advantage, not a species advantage. But okay, sure.
And also not shown by the graph.
Yeah, well, there's that too. It doesn't actually show that on the graph. Which is, we'll take another drink for that. That's it. It's always amazing when creationists don't even know what they have up on their own screens. My favorite one was when Dan Biddle was trying to argue that the secularists acknowledge that fossil graveyards are caused by floods. And he flashes up on screen this like graphic from a book that's like proportion of the different causes of known fossil graveyards. And there's this big one yellow slice of this pie chart that's labeled drought. It's like, hey, Dan, how come we got drought fossil beds in the middle of a flood? Please explain that one, buddy. No?
Oh,
Okay.
man. Yeah, all the, like, the Protoceratops, the Velociraptor, like, was it Nemegtomia? All the different, like, Gobi Desert dinosaurs that were crushed by falling sand dunes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, funny how that happens in a worldwide flood, huh?
Yeah, weird. Ray Gatubelu, who's been a member for 11 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, Goto Kimura would say, and then a whole lot of Japanese text that I don't understand, because as it turns out, I speak virtually no Japanese. So, like, I don't know. I'm hoping it was like an AIG is a bag of dicks, so that way I can take another drink, because I'm a little thirsty. But, I don't know. Yeah, I think it is, in fact, that. So we're going to take a drink based on my attempts at translation real quick. So, cheers. Yeah, as Doc Hog says, those underwater aeolian deposits. Yeah, it's all over the place. All right, here we go.
If it's so bad that it gives a species a disadvantage, then it's lost by...
By the way, I'm seeing 35 people who have liked but 92 people watching, which means that unfortunately, I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve, to bump that number of likes up just a little bit so you don't get Bilbo'd again.
that animal dying, and the other one is kept by that animal surviving better and having more offspring, because it's superior.
Surviving better is a really weird phrase. I know what he means, and I think everyone else does too.
Phrase, yeah.
But, like, no one says it like that.
Yeah.
Superior, the fittest. Well, this zone here is the zone of mutations that make such a slight difference that they don't matter. Look what it says in the caption. I cannot draw this part of the mutation distribution small
No! Wait, hold on. Even wait. Even with beneficial mutations greatly exaggerated, it becomes obvious that essentially all of it. This is from Sanford.
Sanford, yes. This is Sanford.
This is not from Kimura.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So he's okay, wait, did he say this is from Kimura or
Sanford said it was from Kimura, yeah.
no, I mean did Jackson say this is from Kimura? Did he say this is from John Sanford?
I don't so as far as I remember, he has not said who made this graph yet.
Okay.
So he is going to read Kimura in this, which might bring up the topic of who made this, which, the answer is John Sanford.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. In case anyone doesn't know, John Sanford is a PhD plant geneticist who came up with one of the few ideas in young Earth creationism that I can actually say has been disproven in the mathematical sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so generally we say, like, we can't prove or really even disprove with science, right? We gather empirical evidence, and that lends weight to one idea over others, right? And that's the idea with the most evidence. And we go with that provisionally. The same is true with rejecting things, right? We can say things like, well, we've disconfirmed, and we can even sometimes say things like, well, this is disproven, but that's really not even then in the strictly mathematical sense, right?
Right.
This is an idea that's so bad that just using math, you can show, nope, this is impossible. This is mathematically disproven.
I would say William Dembski's specified complexity has also. He tried to provide a mathematical formulation for determining the information content of the genome, and he got eviscerated by mathematician by population geneticists. He got beat on that point so bad. He put out an article saying I wish that evolutionists would attack each other as viciously as they attack me.
They do it way more viciously.
Okay.
Are you kidding me? They almost never pay attention to creationists. They're constantly attacking each other at least as viciously.
Yeah.
Like, the only way you could say something like that is if you just have never actually spent time in the scientific literature reading what people say about each other. All right, here we go.
So a relatively large triangle is shown instead. That's the one he's talking about. The good mutations, the positive mutations. Even with beneficial mutations greatly exaggerated, it becomes obvious that essentially all beneficial mutations will fall within Kimura's no selection zone. Well, if they fall in the no selection zone, then how can natural selection select them to be kept?
They can't. Fun fact, the no selection zone for most populations is vanishingly small, so this isn't actually a thing. The thing is, in Sanford's work, you get the idea that there's a certain hard threshold of, like, how beneficial or how deleterious an allele is. And that above that threshold, or below it, farther away from that zero center point, that's just when selection can start acting. But what's inside the no selection zone actually varies, like we said. So when you have, say, a large population, right, what that can mean is that even relatively small effects can actually, over time, result in positive selection, because there's such a large population that even relatively minor fitness enhancements can spread. Now, in a small populations have the problem that any kind of chance death or chance-based, injury that causes a reduction in reproductive output, anything like that, can swamp even powerfully positive mutations, because there just might only be one or two individuals that have that mutation, and they might just happen to be injured or killed or eaten by a predator as a result of chance events. Wildfires.
Or struck by lightning.
Well, yes, struck by lightning, wildfires.
There's actually a paper on giraffes that got struck by lightning at one particular reserve in Africa.
Damn.
Yeah.
I take it they did not enjoy that experience.
Well, it like splits their skull, so yeah.
Oof.
No. Yeah, it's
Damn.
not great. There was
Ouch.
I have that paper saved somewhere. It was such an interesting paper when I came across it. I was like, it's because that's what Darwin called fortuitous destruction. But it's just, getting giraffes getting struck by lightning is just not something I really ever thought about, but
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that it would happen, but I also never really thought about it. So yeah, that's why this no selection zone can be vanishingly small. And in fact, Zach Hancock, a friend of the channel, who is a population geneticist, has calculated what the approximate size of the no selection zone is in humans. And it's orders of magnitude smaller than what is shown in Kimura's graph. Basically, any beneficial mutation in humans is selectable. So yeah, this is a misunderstanding that Sanford is propagating. And the thing is, I think Sanford is smart enough to know better.
Yep.
Because Sanford is a professional geneticist. He's familiar with the basics of things like population genetics, how genomes work, what fitness is and isn't. And I think that he is lying. I can't prove it.
Yeah.
But
I would agree.
the only other explanation I can find is that Sanford is much, much dumber than everyone thinks, which seems unlikely because, as I'm always told by creationists, he's the guy who invented the gene gun. Which is true. And therefore, he's a giant mega brain genius who apparently can't get the first thing right about population genetics, which is weird to me.
There you go. I sent it to you. I found the paper.
They'll be lost through genetic drift then. This completed...
Hey, at least he knows how they're actually lost, and it's by genetic drift. So you know what? Take a drink for that. Cheers. That is, in fact, what happens during loss in the no selection zone. Although also genetic drift can cause fixation of alleles in the no selection zone. So, he left out that part, but whatever, it's fine.
Picture, which is correct, makes progressive evolution on the genomic level virtually impossible. Now, this is...
It's not correct, because that's John Sanford's bastardization of an already admittedly non-representative of reality figure from a work from the 60s.
His Jon Snow graph, if you will.
Yes.
Known data. observed things. Even harmful mutations mostly fall within the no selection zone. They're not bad enough that the thing dies. Either that.
This is actually also not true because, again, the no selection zone is vanishingly small in most populations. And in fact, most harmful mutations will be selected out. Some will persist, that's true, but most will not.
Or it kills it right away. And who wrote this? This is from a book written by John Sanford.
Hey, he did get there. All right, good job.
There you go.
A professor emeritus at Cornell University.
Hey, Jackson, remind me, what does it mean to be a professor emeritus?
That's why you're like an honorary professor, right?
Yeah,
but not an actual teacher there.
It's a job that comes with a paycheck and literally no duties.
Yeah.
Your job description is just collect your paycheck. That's it.
Which, the hope is that like you're doing other research because you're like you're being honored by the school, but yeah, you're not actually teaching anything.
Yeah.
Because he did, to his credit, very meager credit, he did do some research, in plant genetics. So,
he did. And I mean, it was well regarded. And he also did, in fact, invent the gene gun, which has now to some extent been superseded by other technologies like CRISPR and whatnot. But for the time, it was a big step forward in genetic engineering.
Yeah,
so I'm not trying to take that away from him. But the problem is that the more praise I give John Sanford for being a big brain, the worse it is that he wrote the book Genetic Entropy, The Mystery of the Genome.
Yeah.
Because that book is full of things that if he is in fact as smart as everyone says he is, have to just be lies. Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket for $4.99 says that maybe the inventor of the gene gun is compensating for something. I'm not going to comment on that too much, but I will say this. I have heard his come to Jesus story, which is basically his marriage was on the rocks. And his wife decided to start going to church, which is something that, according to him, she'd never really done before. Neither of them were raised in like a Christian household or anything, but she started going to church during the time when their marriage was on the rocks. And he started going with her. Apparently, that helped patch up their marriage. So he converted to the version of Christianity that was being preached at that church, which, while it wasn't super pushing young Earth creationism, was definitely of the variety of Christianity that tends to just sort of generally accept young Earth creationism. And so he found that it was more theologically satisfying for him to be a young Earth creationist. And so that's why he became a young Earth creationist. It's because a young Earth creationist church helped patch up his marriage. Now, you might be wondering, what about patching up your marriage actually provides evidence for the young age of the Earth or that evolution is fake? The answer is nothing. It is completely unrelated.
Well, Dapper, if it made you feel good, it must be true then. That's how that works.
Yeah. No.
I thought it would. Okay, all right.
I know. I can see why you
I'm
might
out of
think
options
that.
then.
Yeah.
I'm out of answers.
Dr. Sanford is a leading researcher in genetics of plants.
If he were a leading researcher, I would expect him to not be a professor emeritus. I would expect him to just be a professor. And at one point, he was a leading expert in plant genetics.
Yeah.
He is not anymore, and was not by the time this talk was given.
I've read a fair. So in my background, I was a TA for a botany lab for 3 years, and I was working for a person who has worked in botany, and I've read a number of papers in botany, and I have really never come across anything by Sanford.
Yeah.
He was never discussed by the botanist I work for, and like so. That's great, That's great for the work that he did, but like. I'm willing to bet that was a couple decades ago because he published the genetic entropy in early 2000s, late 90s. Like it was a pretty long time
Yeah,
ago,
that sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, his time of relevance has it passed before some of my audience was born.
It's kind of like Dawkins. Like Dawkins' last actual paper is from I think the 90s, and so he hasn't written anything in the technical literature in quite a long time,
Mm-hmm. Which means he's not a top-level researcher. He's not really a researcher anymore at all, which is fine, unless you're going to pretend otherwise. In which case, let's back up a second here.
Invented the gene gun. Have you ever heard
he
of the
said it.
gene gun? Okay, well, it's special.
Hold on, we have to do a poll now. Whenever the creationist asks his audience a question, I need to ask my audience the same question. All right. Capitalize the H. Have you heard of the gene gun? All right. All right. So, guys, answer that question if you will. If you won't, then that's fine too. You don't have to. But we'll let that go for a little while, and I'm hoping to get at least half the people watching. So that'll be like 53 or so people to vote on whether or not you've heard of the gene gun. Goop23 for $2 says, I can hit you with AIG as a bag of gene... Oh, sorry. Can I hit you with AIG as a bag of gene guns? And the answer to that is absolutely, and I will take a drink. Because, yeah, that is another term that you might use for that, is a gene gun, if you will.
Oh, terrible.
Wait, did you just only now get that?
I'm sorry, I was only half listening. I was looking at something else on Discord, then I went, wait a second. Did you just say?
I was thinking, wow, maybe Jackson is just too pure for this world. But no, he was just distracted. He's got his brain in the gutter like everyone else.
I was looking at the side of Discord at some of the friend groups I'm in, and then I went, wait a second.
All right.
Used in genetic engineering in plants. Dr. Sanford, now that he's,
Was it just plants? Was it ever used in animals? I don't actually know.
I thought I was under the. I've not really read much about it. I was under the impression it was like useful across the board. Because I mean, if you're, let's think about it for a moment. Like if it's inserting genes in a cell, and it can do it in plants, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't see why it wouldn't be able to work on like fungal or animal cells equal. I don't know. I haven't read about it, but I would think it'd be able to work on those. But...
Well, I don't know, so I'm not going to call Charles Jackson wrong on that one, since
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. But now we got CRISPR, and you can use CRISPR on literally anything. So CRISPR is so cool. It was one of the last lectures I did with my students. It was actually the week that the dire wolf stories were all dropping, and so I was like, oh my god, this is perfect. Perfect timing, because we're talking about like transgenic organisms, which our president seems to think meant transgender organisms.
Yeah, that was a thing that happened.
Yeah, and so I talked a little bit about like those experiments, but minus the political stuff. And I talked about the direwolf thing. I was like, hey, how many of you have heard about this direwolf thing just came out? Told them about that. And then CRISPR, and like CRISPR is crazy. It's a genuinely amazing technology.
Drink for Godzilla. But yes, I have to agree. It is indeed crazy.
A girl was cured of incurable leukemia using CRISPR. It's crazy.
All right, here we go.
An emeritus professor, and he's gone through the tenure process and all. Now he can say what he thinks and come out as a creationist. And he's published this book called...
By the way, have you ever seen the first edition cover of his genetic entropy book?
Doesn't it have like a UFO on it?
It has a UFO in a library. It's the weirdest thing.
I do remember that, yeah.
It's so freaking weird. Like, why is there a flying saucer in a freaking library on the cover of this book that's basically like, hey guys, did you know that God exists and totally makes evolution impossible for mathematically absurd reasons?
His editor being like, hey, do you want like a DNA, double helix or something on it? You're like, no. I know exactly what I want on the cover.
Flying saucer, bookshelves. Do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That probably go on like the cover of like a Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe book, but yeah, John Sanford, really weird.
Yeah, it's not what you would expect from a young Earth creationist.
The mystery of the genome.
Every time he says genome, I want to scratch my eyeballs out.
It is weird. It is very weird.
I only ever really hear creationists say that, and I don't even hear most of them say it. It's it's bizarre. Like, why does creationism have its own dialect? I don't get it.
Evidences.
I guess it's a sociolect, but that's just a kind of dialect. Whatever.
I think it's genetic meltdown and the mystery of the genome, and you.
No, it's genetic entropy and the mystery of the genome. You had it fine the first time. He doesn't even know what book he's citing.
It's a book. You know, I definitely
It
read
has
that
a
book.
title. Don't worry about it.
It's been a while. It's been a while, guys. Forgive me.
Hey, actually, Borg Emporia, you might be interested to know what the nerdy secret is that I'm working on. Which we have about an hour and 8 minutes left to get to. You might be interested. Let's see. We got 51 votes, which is in fact half the people currently watching. I'm going to end this poll, and we're going to find out how many of y'all have heard of the gene gun. So, have you heard of the gene gun? Yes, 45%. Turtle, 29%. No, 25%. So almost twice as many of you have heard of it as have not, according to this. Then there's the other third or so of you who just like turtles. And you know what? Turtles are great, so no shade. And that is out of 51 votes. Oh, there's Mothra. Drink for Mothra. Thanks, Mothra.
Dapper, have you seen Over the Garden Wall?
It does not sound familiar to me.
Oh, it's a cute little cartoon. But they say "burgle your turts" in it, and that's a phrase I like.
Oh, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. It sounds cute.
We're gonna steal your turtles. We're gonna burgle your turts.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's a cute little cartoon. It's got the guy who is Frodo is the voice of the main character.
Okay.
Forget his name.
Elijah Wood.
There you go. Yeah, he's the main
All
character.
right. Coop23 for $2 says cults in general often have their own sociolect. That's true, but like I feel like Earth creationism is a broad enough phenomenon that it probably shouldn't have a sociolect. But like, evidently I'm wrong. So like, I don't even know why I'm bothering pointing out that that's how it feels to me, because clearly I'm wrong because it does. So it must be big enough for one. Otherwise, it wouldn't have one.
You can find that on the website at Answers in Genesis, and
other places. But yeah,
this is the main finding, one of the main findings in his book.
It's one of the main.
Finding's a strong word.
Yeah, it's one of the main conclusions. That's more accurate. Calling it a finding is a little that would imply that like there's actually arguments that are both sound and in favor of that conclusion, which there really aren't.
Mutations can't make evolution happen. But he's not alone, even among evolutionists, in thinking.
He's not an evolutionist, he's a young Earth creationist. So let's just take a drink for lying about who John Sanford is. Let's be clear, John Sanford is a young Earth creationist who speaks almost exclusively at young Earth creationist venues to audiences of young Earth creationists, often at churches. He is not an evolutionary biologist. He is not generally counted as a peer by evolutionary biologists. He is a crank who shows up to young Earth creationist conventions. And yeah, it's true. Someone pulled some strings and got him to give a talk at, like, the National Institute for Health in the United States.
Oh, and he lied about the Richard Lenski lab experiments during that talk.
Yes, he did. I listened to that talk. It was spectacularly bad.
We did a video about him on my channel way back, and we listened to a bit of that because he said something to the effect of like all the mutations in that were like deleterious or something. It's like, well, hold on a second. If they were all deleterious, why did so many mutations run to fixation that increased the cell size and increased like the like density and all this other stuff? If they were all deleterious, why would that happen? The SIT plus mutation, why would that, like, you think Drift just like ran all these mutations to fixation? Like, that's insane, you know? I don't know.
So
crazy stuff.
JDL2150 in the chat, which by the way is a new name for me, so welcome, says, personally, I think sociolects are size dependent but isolation dependent. And you know what? That is an excellent point that I had not been thinking about. Yeah, because it's true that size and isolation are going to be like somewhat correlated, right? Like the larger a subpopulation is, the less likely they are to be completely isolated, or the degree to which they can be isolated is going to go down.
Right.
But it's still true that of any given size, you can have widely varying levels of social isolation. And the more socially isolated a group is going to be, the more likely they are to have their own distinctive sociolect, which is a really good point. So, you know what? I say, hey, let's see if we can't get JDL 2150 a membership, because I think that was worth some membership stuff right there. Because it is not that often someone can come along and make a linguistics point, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. So, like, I don't know, maybe see if we can aim a get to subscription or membership. I mean,
do you ever get Thursday and Havietz in your chat? Does he ever show up here?
That sounds familiar. I don't not. If I do, it's not very often.
He was one of our science friends, but he doesn't show up too often.
Yeah,
but he's like an actual is he a linguist? I think he's a linguist. I think that's what they said. But anyway, I don't know if he shows up in your chat.
All right, here we go.
This next. But first I wanted to point this out. Scott Todd, a professor at Kansas State University in
That's a great name. Scott Todd. I like it.
Attorney at law.
Scott Todd, Esquire. All right, anyway.
1999 said in Nature magazine, the premier journal of science in the world, said this: even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, who's the intelligent designer? God.
Not something that's actually in that quotation, but thanks for giving away the actual
end goal.
Reason. Yeah, the end goal of intelligent design. Because
usually they don't say the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, Coop Do 3 just gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership, but it went to Jez, which welcome Jez, but not JDL 2150. I do appreciate it though, and then we'll take a drink. Here's a drink. All right. Yeah, so normally the intelligent design advocates, they like to, hide the ball on what they actually mean. Now, you don't have to be a super genius to figure out that what they mean is, the Christian God, or maybe some of them are theist Jews that I just don't know about. But I don't know of anyone who isn't a Christian. Yeah, I don't know anyone who isn't a Christian who works for, the Discovery Institute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some of them have been in what you might call extremely derived branches of the Christian family tree. Like, who was that guy who was a Mooney?
Oh, Jonathan Wells.
Yeah, Jonathan Wells. Late Jonathan Wells was a member of the Unification Church, which is more commonly known as the Moonies, which is a South Korean group of Christian cults who believed that their founder, Sun Myung Moon, was in fact the returned Jesus. And they used to believe that his wife was his eternal co-equal goddess figure till they got divorced. Then suddenly she just got kind of scrubbed out of the theology. And then also happens. Not shortly after that, his kids started speaking out against him and pointing out that guys, our dad isn't Jesus. But apparently it didn't matter much, and he has since died. And I think the Moonies were most famous for their mass weddings, in which hundreds to thousands of people would get married to people they had never met before that day in one giant ceremony, usually taking up entire sports stadiums in South Korea.
Fascinating.
So, yeah, it's a very strange group of Christians, which, Christianity is full of strange groups. But this is one of the stranger groups among them, I would say.
The Discovery Institute had Denton, who was it Michael Denton, I think was his name?
Wasn't he Catholic?
Was he Catholic? I know that Meyer's Catholic. I thought
Beckley was
Denton,
Catholic too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
Beckley,
Denton
who, by the
was
way,
claimed...
murderer. Just gonna put that out there.
Was he Catholic? I thought he was. There was one guy who claimed
Adventist?
to be an agnostic, which I thought was really weird.
I find that unlikely.
Right.
Impossible, but unlikely.
It was Denton. He's self-described as an agnostic. Yeah, it's okay, you're agnostic, but you work for this group that definitely argues for an intelligent designer, huh? Okay.
Yeah, maybe. Right. Look, I can't prove he's lying. But, I don't know. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it might just be a duck.
Even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it's not naturalistic.
Actually, it's not. You could have a naturalistic designer, but like whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care. Guess what? Get another quote mine. Here's the thing: quotes don't really matter unless the thing you're trying to establish is what the position of the person who you quoted, which isn't what Charles Jackson is trying to establish here. He's trying to establish that evolution is in fact just not a real thing, which means that what he should be doing is presenting, data that contradict the predictions of evolution. But instead, all he's doing is cherry-picking quotations that he can use to make it sound like that there's some significant dissent about evolutionary biology in the scientific community, which there isn't. Like, it's just not a real thing. So, yeah, that's why I titled this the way I did, Creationist Quotemines, right? Because that's all he has. All he really has is just like, well, this one scientist said this one thing that if I take it this way, sounds like evolution is in trouble. And pretty much never would that actual scientist agree with his take on what that person has said. But hey, you know what? We are at about the 1 hour mark. We're going to take a quick break to refresh drinks. You can, go get yourself a snack, go use the bathroom, whatever. We will be right back in just a few minutes. And you guys can enjoy the coming soon for the next game of Star Trek Endurance, which hopefully is this week. That's the plan. And then the musical stylings of one Beethoven while we are out of here.
Captain's Log, Stardate 60046.3. We have received an urgent message from Admiral Talara of Starfleet Command. We are ordered to redirect the ship to the colony on Carina 7 in the Beta Quadrant. The colony's governor, Sarita Sebastian, is reporting a series of strange phenomena that threaten the colony's safety. She states the children born on Carina 7 are aging rapidly. The native flora and fauna are growing rapidly and just as rapidly withering, and structures that should have lasted decades are falling apart. The Kong Z is the closest ship to the colony with quantum slipstream drive, and it is imperative that we discover a solution to the colony's problems.
Carina 7 is a warm M-class planet as near to Earth in terms of environment as it could be hoped. The planet was settled a few years earlier by a group of mostly winemakers, and it is a vital part of the Federation's strategy to improve relations with the Ferengi Alliance. The wine is sold to Ferengi merchants, and the latinum is used by the Federation in dealings with polities that still use currency-based economics. The rapid aging phenomenon threatens this key strategic world, and if the crew cannot solve it, the colony is doomed. Is it a natural phenomenon? Or is it being orchestrated by unseen actors? Or is it perhaps a secret third thing? Find out next time on Star Trek Endurance, only on the Top Hats Off channel.
We are back. Welcome back, Jackson.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So before we get on with this, I want to say, well, first, thank you everyone for your generosity. You guys have been exceptionally generous, especially this month. You are the reason that I have a fancy new computer to continue making the videos that you guys like. But hey, that being said, I still depend on your generosity for things like, having a place to live. So, if you are enjoying what's going on here at this channel and you would like to help support it and you can afford to support it, please consider one of the many ways that we have for you to support the channel. Obviously, super chats, super thanks, super stickers all go a long way. They're in fact probably the largest single income source on the channel. But that being said, they are far from the only one. There's also the channel memberships. You can give people those. You can get yourself that. It starts at $1.99 a month. There's the Patreon. That starts at $1 a month. You can also get a 15% discount if you go annual. The Patreon is linked in the description. There's also a Patreon for my regular co-host, Ben Hovind. Also, he and I both have Amazon wishlists linked in the description. Both the memberships and the Patreon get you membership in, or at least access to membership in the Discord server for supporters. They give you early access to my scripted videos. At this point, I think it's like 5 or 6 months in advance. Like it's a lot. There's a lot there.
Nice.
Yeah. And yeah, it really helps out. If you are not interested in doing that, there's also merch. If you want to get yourself a mug or a blanket or a pillow or a sticker or a t-shirt or a hoodie or a baby onesie or stuff like that. All in the link in the description, as well as there is a merch shelf below this. That one, actually, I'll be honest, doesn't get me a whole lot of money, but it is really cool when people send me pictures of their Dapper Dinosaur merch. I really like that. So, with that preamble, or the little commercial bit out of the way, I think we are ready to continue on with Charles Jackson, unless you have something that you want to add before we do that, Jackson.
Nope. I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Even if all the data points to God, I won't believe, because it's supernatural.
Actually, he didn't say that.
Not what he said.
Not what he said. Said it wasn't scientific. Also didn't say he wouldn't believe it. You're allowed to believe things that aren't scientific. Isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's true. Borgenporia says, I haven't mentioned, have you mentioned Sheepit? Yes. So another way that you can help that does not directly cost you money, although it will slightly increase your electricity bill, is that you can render for me. So any of my videos that use any animation do so through a render farm called Sheepit, which basically takes the render time for my animation from months down to more like days, which is something that is possible for me to keep up with. So if you want to help me with that, the way Sheepit works is when people render my frames, it takes points off of my point total. When I render frames, it adds points to my points total. And how high priority my frames are depend on how high my points total is compared to the points total of other people who are uploading frames. So the higher my points total is, the higher priority my projects are. If you want to get me those points, what you can do is you can go to this description and there will be a link for where to download the Sheepit client, as well as a render key and my username. You download the client, and you enter my username, enter under the username section in the settings, and then you put in my render key, which will allow you to count as me for the purposes of rendering, but will not give you access to my account proper, where you could do things like shut down my entire account, or upload all sorts of crazy projects that I don't want to spend my own points on. But if you want to help out with that, basically it runs your either GPU or CPU, whichever one you choose, or both, if you choose both. And that will, of course, cost electricity, but it does not directly give me any money. So that's another way that you can help out without directly, joining the Patreon or sending super thanks or anything. So that's another important way. All right, now we're ready. Thank you, Borgenporia.
Not natural. What if the supernatural is...
Why? Why is this? I guess this is how it sounds now?
Oh no.
This is terrible.
Stuff is actually real, then God's a fact of the universe, And you're a fool for not allowing him into the equation.
He is making all of this up. None of that was in the thing he read. I'm taking a drink for, going way beyond what was in there. Like, the thing is, though, and if all of that were in there, he'd have read it.
Correct. Yeah, he would have just put it up on the screen.
Right.
Obviously, what Scott Todd Esquire is talking about is the idea that science can't test supernatural intelligent designers. That is beyond the purview of science. It can test natural intelligent designers, but as Charles Jackson was gracious enough to tell us, he does not believe in a natural intelligent designer. So we don't have to worry about that. But
I don't think we're getting that super chat goal, by the way. We still need 22 and we only have about an hour left. Oh well. I guess I don't get a new pair of shoes this week.
Your dinosaur feet?
Yep.
Science, that's not logic, it's not good thinking, it's certainly not good theology. Next.
Oh no, it's not good theology. The horrors. Let's now turn to our next quote mine.
Oh, this guy again.
Here's Dr. Schwartz again, and
let us know who is Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz there, Jackson.
This guy is like a contrarian anthropologist, if I remember correctly, when we looked at his stuff last time. Yeah, he's like, was he the dude who does Bigfoot stuff? He's got some contrarian. No, he's the one who says humans are more closely related to orangutans or something like that. I just remember that he
bonkers.
What was it? Anthropologist. Yeah, he had some weird contrarian beliefs. The red ape, orangutans, and human origins. So he argues that orangutans are sister to humans rather than, for instance, chimpanzees and bonobos.
Weird how when you do genetic studies, they are recovered as the outgroup for all of hominidae.
Yeah. 2000, and this book came out in 2005, well after we had genetics from all the great apes, so I don't know what his line of reasoning for that is.
My unfinished kerning sock for $2 says, don't mind for quotes. Like and share instead. Yes, please do hit like and please do share. It really does help. Because, hey, the channel has had some pretty good growth lately, and I would like that to keep up.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, not explosive growth, but pretty decent.
He's pointing out this in 2007. The history of organic life is undemonstrable. We cannot prove a whole lot in evolutionary biology, and our findings will always be an educated guess.
Actually says hypothesis, which educated guess isn't the worst, definition for that. Also not really, the best. So, yeah. It's always great when the quote mine isn't even actually directly quoting, but now you have to resort to paraphrasing. And again, I don't really care what Jeffrey Schwartz has to say. If you had arguments that actually involve things like, data, hypotheses, anything like that, he'd give them. He doesn't.
Hypothesis, an educated guess. There is one true evolutionary history of life, and whether we will actually ever know it is not likely.
Now, that part actually is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is actually one objectively correct ancestral tree for all of life.
You've given the quote or the analogy before that, there is one way to walk from, me in Louisiana to Dapper in Arizona. There is one way. If I walk here to there, there is only one way I went.
Yeah, there is an actual path.
There are potential paths, you could say, that also work, that get me from Shreveport, to Arizona, right? There are other ways. But, figuring out which path I actually took is the job of phylogeneticists and sciences generally.
Right. And the fact that we might never actually be able to say for certain which of, say, a small number of options is actually correct, doesn't disprove that the walk occurred.
Yeah.
Which is basically what Charles Jackson is trying to argue. Basically, unless you can figure out exactly how Jackson got from Shreveport to Tucson, then he didn't actually get from Shreveport to Tucson, despite his presence in Tucson, which isn't actually real, but is only hypothetical. Jackson, come on, man. What are you doing?
The last time I was over in Tucson was in 2019, and I would like to go back. The desert is quite beautiful.
It is. We have Saguaro National Park right around where I live.
Nice. I was very jealous of all you guys going down to the Grand Canyon. I went there. Yeah, that was was it? Yeah, I guess it was 2019. Yeah. And it was winter, so it was quite cold. But it was a lot of fun. We went through and then went up into California and then came back home. It was really neat.
Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket for $4.99 says, "My dad lost his lungs in the Quotemines. I can't believe all of his work was in vain." Yeah, he got that quote lung, huh? You gotta watch out for that. Jared Nodder has become a member at the amniote level. Welcome, Jared Nodder. Everybody, send some amniotes and maybe some sessile tunicates, not pelagic tunicates. Don't listen to Vishanti if she's here. She is in fact a traitor to the proper, hardworking, God-fearing, patriotic sessile tunicates.
And if you want to hear about the livings and workings of both God-fearing sessile tunicates and heathen pelagic tunicates, we did a video over on my channel called The Lancelot's Tale, in which we talk about them.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're not subscribed to Jackson's channel, why that?
Yeah, if you like zoology, we're almost done with a series that has taken us almost 5 years to do, in which we recount the evolutionary history of all groups of organisms on Earth.
It's a lot.
And 50 episodes of this thing are just about animals. And the last 8 are going to be about all the non-animals. So, I didn't write the book that we're basing our talk off of. So,
hey Jackson, remind me, what's plant blindness again?
Yeah, Dawkins wrote it. So the book The Ancestor's Tale was written by a zoologist. So he gives plants, in fairness, he gives plants 3 tails, but it's at the very end of the book, and it's kind of oh yeah, plants are a thing. Anyway.
In case you're wondering, plant blindness is an actual psychological phenomenon in which humans tend to ignore the existence of plants unless they're specifically looking at or for them.
I know that I was very aware of my plant blindness when I started TAing botany lab, and then now my wife and I, we are always looking at plants wherever we go. We're always looking at wildflowers and stuff. So yeah.
Jillian says, "Hey Dapper, are you aware that the description of this video says it features Kip and Vish?" That is a horrible, libelous statement, and that is completely untrue. I don't know why anyone would ever say that. It's certainly not something I just fixed after reading that comment just now. Here we go.
Most importantly, we have to think about questioning underlying assumptions. Dr. Schwartz is trying to save evolution. He says, let's question these assumptions we've always...
By the way, if this sound persists with this quality, we're not going to continue with this video next month. I can't do 2 hours of this.
I don't even understand, what is going on here.
It switched mics. Whatever mic they were recording, they switched to a different mic. Probably because the first mic got unplugged or something. I'm pretty sure it was using that lapel mic that he's got clipped awkwardly to his t-shirt there. And I think now we're just using, the camera mic.
Dang.
Mm-hmm. It also could be that, that mic ran out of, whatever battery or whatever it was putting power from. So.
That's fair.
About molecular changes in the DNA happening gradually, and about maybe hybrids are part of it. Maybe it's not just slow and gradual stuff like Darwin said. We got to question these assumptions, whether we're dealing with molecules of DNA.
There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, maybe there are other processes that happen in evolution. Now, of course, the way that Charles Jackson is portraying them, that's not what happened. But obviously, we don't care what Darwin thought 200 years ago.
Right.
Like, that's just not a factor in any biology that is done today.
Yep, it's that thing where creationists like to pretend, or even maybe honestly believe, that science functions the same way that a revealed religion does, that it has prophets, and that we are not allowed to question the prophets, and that Charles Darwin is one of the prophets of science, and that to not concern yourself with what he said and what he thought, and to not base your research on his words is some kind of like blasphemy or something. It's very, very silly. And while I'm not going to say that there are no cults of personality that prevail in science, at least for a time, science is primarily not about personalities. It is about the data. It's about the evidence. It is about making predictions and having those predictions turn out to be correct or incorrect, and what that can tell you about the principles under which you're operating. The personalities come and go. The data, that's what stays. Josh McGee's for $5 says, is plant blindness solvable with the same glasses with slits that you use in snow? I don't think so. I do like those, though. And I do like how long people have been using those. Like, I went to a museum in... I think I was in British Columbia. I think it was in Vancouver. And they had, like... yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it was. Unless I'm just badly misremembering this particular museum trip. But it had like examples of like First Nations snow gear, and I don't think it was actually like artifacts. I think it was recreations, but I'm not sure. But one of the things they had was like these goggles that are just opaque with a tiny little slit in them to help prevent snow blindness. I was like, hey, people still use that today, and it was like, yeah, we found like examples of this kind of like snow goggle thing from like thousands and thousands of years ago. I'm like, that's really cool. Humans are...
It is pretty cool.
Humans are pretty neat. And, like, if you think about it, like, people first showed up in, like, what's now Alaska and, like, northern Canada, like, what, like, 10, 12,000 years ago or something?
Yeah.
And, like, they had some of the same technology that we still use today to survive in those kinds of environments. And they were just like, yeah, it's cool. It's the Paleolithic. We still need to worry about snow blindness, so we're going to fix it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Humans, pretty neat. Pretty neat.
If you haven't seen it, a little while back on my channel, we had an archaeologist named Joseph Wilson who is a really cool dude. Highly recommend like reading and and watching his stuff. But Dapper and I talked to him.
Yeah.
And in our talk with him, he discussed like crossovers between like the Vikings and other people with the Native Americans and the trading of technologies and things like that. So if you are interested in that, you should go see the talk that Dapper and I did over there.
Yes, you should. It was a lot of fun. All right, here we go.
Anything else? Next. This man here is Dr. Stephen Wolfram. I think he got his doctoral degree at about 17 years old in the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s. And then he invented the Mathematica software and became one of those super rich computer geeks.
Like, he invented Wolfram Alpha? Is that him? Is that the guy?
I think that's that guy, yeah.
Okay. I used Wolfram Alpha earlier today.
Nice.
Yeah. I typed in an equation and I was like, hey, solve for this variable. And Wolfram Alpha is like, okay, the solution is like log base 1 over f plus like 2i, and there was this whole long thing, and I was like, man, this is a lot more complicated than I was expecting it to be. Okay, cool. And then I didn't actually end up taking that whole equation on board because I was like, I do not want to have to figure out how to like type this into like a word processor, or even worse, have it display in an animation. Like, nope. I'm just not going to do that.
That's fair.
Guys. Then Dr. Wolfram, who isn't a young man anymore necessarily, is hid in his townhouse for 20 years and wrote this book, which the entire scientific world waited with bated breath to hear what the boy genius would say.
What do you want to bet this is a book that no one here has ever heard of?
I didn't even know he wrote a book.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I've never really cared about anything he. I mean, it's great that he did this really awesome program that works and is cool and everything, but like, I would be willing to bet exorbitant amounts of money that no one cared.
Oh, Fits a
outside
mitochondrial Eve rate says log base 1. Is that a thing? No, not log base 1. Log base 1 over F. Where F is a different variable. So there were two variables that I had to find, F and N. And the solution involved the log base 1 over F of some expression. And yeah, it was a whole bunch of nonsense. Economists are always... Oh, sorry. This is Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket with the 11th Super Chat for the Super Chat goal, bringing us close to the halfway point. It says, economists are always quoting Wealth of Nations. Engineers are always quoting Carnot. Mathematicians are always quoting Babylon. JFC. It's not a faith. It's true. Like, when was the last time you actually heard an economist, like, reference the Wealth of Nations? Like, it just doesn't happen.
Outside of like a historical context, like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, biologists will do that. They'll be like, Darwin said back in, the 1870s, he wrote some book on, like, human evolution, or he wrote this thing about, like, plant hybrids or whatever. And then subsequent 150 years, there's all this other work that's come out. No one just says, well, Darwin said it, and that's good enough for me. Like, that's not a thing that happens, so...
It's really not, despite the degree to which creationists act like it is. All right, let's hear what this book is.
In his book, A New Kind of Science, he found and researched it.
I've never heard of that. Let's see if the audience has.
Heard it.
All right. Wait, nope, that's a Q&A. I don't want a Q&A. I want a poll. Start a poll. Have you heard of A New Kind of Science by Wolfram? All right, let's see what happens. All right, there you go, guys. There is a poll.
Looked and observed, as any scientist ought to, that there are patterns in nature, not just in the living world, but in the non-living world too.
This isn't news to anyone.
No, come on, that can't be what his...
If
that can't be the whole point.
If that's what the book is actually about, I can see why it doesn't seem to have made any splash at all. Because that's not news at all.
Hear me out. There are patterns in nature.
I'm taking a drink because either this book is incredibly dumb or Charles Jackson is incredibly dumb at telling us what it's about. There are patterns in nature. Yeah, no kidding.
So I just looked it up on Wikipedia. So it says the thesis of A New Kind of Science is twofold. That the nature of computation must be explored experimentally, okay? And that the results of these experiments have great relevance to understanding the physical world.
So not just that there are patterns. I hate this so much. Why do I do this to myself? Oh, right. I know why. Never mind. I do it for y'all. For the audience.
You've seen those crisscross patterns on the back of a rattlesnake or other animals. And you may have also been standing at the beach and watched as a wave washed back out into the ocean. And in the little rivulets in the sand, the heavier grains of sand that contain the black biotite mica, the black mica, actually get down into those rivulets and they make that same crisscross. How many have ever seen that? Same little black sand crisscross pattern and a wave is rushing back out pretty fast. Fast-moving water always makes that kind of...
Yeah, except that those don't have the same underlying phenomenon. Like, we know that in one case it's a wave interference pattern, and in the other case, it's a reaction-diffusion interaction between different chemicals in the embryological development of the rattlesnake. Like, those aren't the same. It turns out, sometimes different processes can result in vaguely similar patterns. Like, canyons. They look kind of like Lichtenberg figures, which are the kind of figures that you get when you pass large amounts of electricity through a largely electrically not conductive. What's the opposite? Why am I having trouble with this? Insulating material, right? So, like, you ever see those people who do, like, the incredibly dangerous hobby of creating, like, art by passing high voltage electricity through wood?
I've never seen that.
Okay, first of all, don't do it. It's incredibly dangerous. People die all the time doing it. Like, unless you have a professional setup and you actually are, like, you know, trained in electrical safety and you're taking all the proper precautions for high voltage, don't try to do this wood burning thing. But if you've ever seen anyone do it, or you've looked it up, or like you're aware of what I'm talking about, you get these figures called Lichtenberg figures, right? They're these branching, sort of like almost fractally complex patterns. And they look a lot like what you get in a canyon. But they're not being formed in the same way. Now, there is a connection in that both electricity and water seeks the path of least resistance, and that can often turn into sort of a branching fractal pattern. But they're still not being caused by the same thing. And again, I want to repeat, do not burn wood with electricity. There's an extremely good chance that you will severely injure yourself or just die. Don't do it.
Wolfram says in the living world and the non-living world, these patterns are replete. They're everywhere. The pattern that you see even in the bracts, in the flower bud, follow the Fibonacci series.
So they don't actually follow the Fibonacci series in most cases.
Yeah.
They actually
And
follow...
again, different reason.
Yeah. So this is actually called a phyllotaxis spiral, and is a kind of space-filling spiral, in which as you go out, given how much the things that you're trying to fill space with increase in size, there's a certain like turn radius that you need to establish in your phyllotaxic spiral. You can actually look up how to construct such a spiral. It's not the most complicated thing, nor is it the simplest thing, but like, it's not a Fibonacci sequence. It's not a Fibonacci spiral. Also, it does so happen that often the number of instances that you get if you're following a phyllotaxis spiral are often themselves Fibonacci numbers, but not always. And so, yeah, basically, the reason that a phyllotaxis spiral is used is because it is space-saving, which means that you can maximally fill the available space, which is the most energy-efficient way for plants to grow things like flowers. There's Godzilla. Take another drink. So the fact is that this is not some kind of special pattern woven into the fabric of plants. It's just that these things are defined via genetics, and if you have natural selection operating, it will tend to favor the most energy efficient method of growing things like flowers. So guess what happens? You get these kinds of spirals because of natural selection. It's because evolution works that this happens. If evolution,
he's just kind of pointing to like random phenomena and just being like, "Isn't this cool?"
which it is,
okay.
Yeah, it's just that doesn't really help anything.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that evolution is fake, because the thing is, if evolution works, then yeah, you'll get space filling spirals because they're efficient. And the fact that they kind of resemble Fibonacci spirals, okay, cool.
Dapper, don't you know that like the your vascular system and the like nutrient transport system of plants is fractal? Is kind of like
I
a
did,
fractal
yeah,
pattern?
because
Like-
it needs to transport nutrients and whatnot to all sorts of places in a body, so it kind of has to be.
Wow, that must mean intelligent design. That's what that must mean.
Yeah. The fact that it
like a
couldn't be
fractal
any
pattern.
other way, and therefore would have
Yeah.
had to evolve that way. That yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Crazy,
so
huh?
we are going to close down the poll, and we're going to see. We got 37 votes on this poll. Have you heard of A New Kind of Science by Wolfram? No, 75%. Turtle, 21%. Yes, 2%. So basically, this book is largely unknown, but I'm glad that that Charles Jackson here has found something in it that he thinks is helpful to his case. It's not, as far as I can tell, but like, good for you, buddy.
The golden ratio, just like the nautilus shell, the snail shell.
These are also examples of things that typically are not actually Fibonacci spirals, but the people
Right.
pretend are. It turns out the
just 'cause
golden
it kinda
spiral
looks like it.
Yeah. The golden spiral isn't nearly as ubiquitous as like woo peddlers want you to think it is. So I'm going to take another drink for him just naming things that aren't actually golden spirals. But he's going to pretend they are anyway.
He says that all of nature is unfolding to just a few very, very simple mathematical equations, which he calls cellular automatons. And he
That would be cellular automata. It's not tons, but look, cellular automata are where I'm familiar with it is like in Conway's Game of Life, right? Where you have a grid of cells, and their state is dependent on processing through a finite series of rules every tick of the clock in the program, right? So if you've ever played Conway's Game of Life, you're familiar with that basic kind of cellular automaton. There are other kinds of cellular automata programs like Langton's Ant and even more. And the thing that they're good at is producing complex emergent behavior from relatively simple rules. They were basically modeled on the idea of an ant colony, right? Like an ant is a relatively simple organism, a singular ant. It's pretty dumb. It is basically just a biological robot that responds in predictable ways to stimuli that come at it. And it doesn't have a whole lot of creative thinking or anything. But in aggregate, the ant colony itself can do amazing things that mimic the complex behavior of an entire large organism, right? Similarly, the way that your cells interact. Each of your cells is a relatively simple stimulus output cell that isn't particularly intelligent or anything. But together, they produce you, a much more complex and reasonably intelligent, presumably, organism. So I don't know how Wolfram here is taking that idea. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it just kind of sounds like Charles Jackson is just saying that that Wolfram is just saying that there are like a number of physical laws that are that govern like relatively simply the behavior of matter, and these can be arranged into more complex phenomena, which again, I don't think Wolfram is taking credit for that idea, given that it's been around for much longer than any of us have been alive. But like, okay, and
it looks like we only have 22 minutes. I don't think we're going to get the super chat goal. I guess I'll have to keep all my new projects to myself.
Programmed these into a computer and got some really interesting results. Now, I wondered in the year 2000, when we all knew he was coming out with this book in 2002, I wondered what the evolutionists would do with this. In 2000, already 40,000 copies of this book had sold before it was even printed. Everyone wanted to know what Wolfram was going to say. Well, when he came out with this theory, I wonder if the evolutionist is going to say, well, you see, creationists, we don't need God. The Big Bang, the universe created these mathematical equations. Or were they going to say, uh-oh, this is bad. Mathematical equations must be written by a mathematician.
Here's what they're going to say. Because the universe seems to be relatively consistent in how it operates, and math is relatively consistent, and math was itself developed on the basis of observing the world. It wasn't actually developed a priori as a set of like logical syllogisms and assumptions and whatnot, like that we actually have in like the elements. It wasn't actually developed that way. It was actually developed empirically. Therefore, math corresponds in many cases to ways in which the universe operates, because it was based on that in the first place. That's what they're going to say. This is just as dumb as like laws need a lawgiver, which is just conflating laws in the sense of like what legislatures write down and pass versus just the actual operating of the universe as it operates, which are not the same thing.
So we'll just reject Wolfram's idea because that insinuates there's a God. He said, yeah, I didn't know what they were going to do. What happened when Wolfram's book came out in 2002? Nothing.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Poo-pooed the whole thing and went, oh, well, what's next? Now, I predict they're going to pick up Wolfram, who's now need him. They need Schwartz.
Now remember, we are living in the future as far as this version of Charles Jackson is concerned. And I've not noticed any uptick in reference to a new kind of science recently. It has not become the new basis for science.
What was the point of this? He literally just said, what? What did they say? Nothing. Yep. Then why did you bring it up?
Because he thinks Wolfram agrees with him. That's it. He's telling the story of the poor beleaguered Wolfram who wrote a book that proves creationism, but that everyone ignored because they hate creationism and they hate Jesus and they just want to sin. That's why. See, the only reason you believe in things like the divinity of Charles Darwin is because you're horny. That's it.
I mean, that may be true. I don't know.
They need Wolfram. They need guys like Wolfram and new ideas, something fresh, other than the stale old Darwin idea that's dying on the vine right now as we speak. Watch for what happens with A and KOS. That's what they call the book for short of new kind of science. Next. Also, this evolutionist.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I guess.
Completely pointless.
Thank you.
But sure.
Bailed out evolution back in the 1970s with her theory that mitochondria and chloroplasts and other little parts.
Well, 1967, but all right.
Inside
Yeah.
a free living cell really used to be bacteria that got into bigger cells, and evolutionists were.
I mean, the fact that we actually happen to know that Rickettsia bacteria are the closest living relatives of mitochondria might have something to do with, the general acceptance of this idea. I don't know.
Gliomargarita is like the sister taxon to chloroplasts. Like a particular genus of cyanobacteria is the sister taxon. I should say of plastids. Chloroplasts are one type of plastid, but of the plastids that exist within eukaryotes. Like, unless you're willing to say it is a massive major coincidence that plastids have a genome, and that genome happens to put them sister to Gliomargarita and the genome of mitochondria, which they're the only organelles, those two organelles together, the only ones that have a separate genome from the nucleus, and it just happens that the mitochondria has a genome that is most similar to Rickettsia. I don't know what else. I literally don't know what else you can say to that. It just so happens that they use 4-mil methionine as their start codon instead of methionine like eukaryotes, and it just so happens that they have bacterial ribosomes. It just so happens that they have a bacterial like inner membrane and all this other stuff. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, not important. Goop23 for $5 says the equations of the universe matter until radiometric dating is inconvenient for us. Yeah, there's that too, right? If you're going to be so concerned with the math that helps define how the universe works, hey, guess what that same math tells us about the age of the universe and the age of Earth and, the ancestry of extant organisms?
Oh,
weird.
Oh, Dapper, I forgot. Somebody. So on the Wikipedia page for A New Kind of Science, there's a section on the utility of the book. Would you like to hear what it says?
Yes, please.
It says NKS has been criticized for not providing specific results that are immediately applicable to ongoing scientific research. There has been criticism, implicit and explicit, that the study of simple programs has little connection to the physical universe, and hence is of limited value. Steven Weinberg has pointed out that no real-world system has been satisfactorily explained using Wolfram's methods. Mathematician Stephen G. Krantz wrote, "Just because Wolfram can cook up a cellular automaton that seems to produce the spot pattern on a leopard, may we safely conclude that he understands the mechanism by which the spots are produced on the leopard, or why the spots are there, or what function, evolutionary or mating or camouflage, that they perform." And it even has a section on natural selection specifically, in which somebody says, Wolfram's claim that natural selection is not the fundamental cause of complexity in biology has led journalist Chris Lavers to say that Wolfram does not understand the theory of evolution, and NKS has been heavily criticized as not original or important enough to justify its title and claims.
Ouch.
Savage. Yeah.
Ouch. I mean, look, that it seems like it's sort of a version of like Nobel disease, right? Guy
Yeah.
is really great at math, thinks that therefore he can unlock the mysteries of the universe, gives it a go, is very proud of his work, and then everyone else takes a look and they're like, "This ain't it, man. This just ain't it." Sorry.
Yeah.
Happy for her theory because it explains a big jump from bacteria to normal cells. Because bacteria doesn't have a nucleus.
Normal cells. Here's a fun fact. The number of bacterial cells on Earth vastly outnumbers the number of eukaryotic cells on Earth. Bacteria are the normal cells. Eukaryotes are the weirdos. I'm taking a drink for normal cells being used in reference to eukaryote cells. Like, I get it. Charles Jackson, everyone watching, is a eukaryote. But y'all are weird. Bacteria are the normal ones. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, like, her theory does explain and make predictions about aspects of cell biology that up to that point were not well understood. There had been a couple of like Russian papers in like the 1920s that also kind of made stabs at like endosymbiosis, but they were kind of lost basically. This whole crazy thing happened in Russia, but anyway, and so
That's a phrase that could be used in a lot of circumstances.
yeah, that's fair. But in this particular case, you had the Bolshevik Revolution and all that sort of stuff, and so there wasn't a lot of access in Russia, the USSR, to like Western scientists, and so Margulis was basically the person who in the West really came up or formalized this idea. She provided a lot of really good evidence for it, and then what's funny is the chloroplast aspect of it was picked up immediately because botanists had already kind of suspected that there was an evolutionary connection between cyanobacteria and plastids, but she was the one who really supplied the data for it. The mitochondria took a bit more evidence because its genome is so reduced.
Yeah.
Like it's lost the vast majority of its genes to the nucleus.
Hey, fun thing. We're observing a few instances of primary endosymbiosis happening in real time, and we're watching the genomes of the engulfed bacteria reduce as genes that are unnecessary are deleted, and some genes that are still necessary are being transferred to the nuclear genome of the host eukaryotic cell. That's a thing we're seeing happen right now.
With Pollinella, which uses Senecacoccus, which is a different genus, an extraordinarily common genus of cyanobacteria. So the most common cyanobacteria on the planet are called the synproclade. It is Senecacoccus and Prochlorococcus, and so those guys are those are super abundant. And the Senecacoccus has a symbiotic relationship with a little protozoan called Pollinella. That is, Senecacoccus is doing the exact same thing that plastids do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different cyanobacteria. It's removed from Glio margarita.
We're watching a new kind of plankton evolve through endosymbiosis, basically.
Yeah, and you can do tests on endosymbiosis in the lab. You can induce symbiotic events with I think there was one with yeast where yeast was basically the researchers treated it so that it allowed some kind of cyanobacteria. I think it was Senecacoccus also the yeast and the cyanobacterium passed things back and forth between each other.
I want to give a congratulations to Jillian Solid Waves Wren and Holly Unbiblical Egyptian Hegemony Hawk for both getting bingo, as well as Dragon Spartan 90 Official also got a bingo. So congratulations to those three for getting a bingo. If you are wondering how to do the whole bingo thing, ask the mods because I don't keep track of it. I just know that it goes on. Yeah, so some of my fans were like, it would be really cool to have a bingo game. And I'm like, well, then y'all should make it. And next thing you know, there was a bingo game.
Nice. Oh, one more note. It should be noted that Margulis did also kind of get high on her own supply. She had
Oh yeah.
sort of Nobel syndrome. She didn't win a Nobel, but she, with endosymbiotic theory, she became extraordinarily well known in evolutionary biology because of this idea, which was correct. And then she went on to coin this idea called serial endosymbiosis, in which she tried arguing that like literally every organelle was also an endosymbiotic event. And
Which
like
no. Mm.
and also like speciation occurs because of symbiosis or because of endosymbiosis. Then again, it's like no, that didn't happen.
She went a bit overboard. But you know what? She still produced what is now the widely accepted and even observed mechanism for many cases of how organelles come about, especially organelles with their own genomes. If it has its own genome and it's an organelle, probably endosymbiosis.
Yeah.
Itself, where all the DNA is. It's so much more simple. There's a huge jump. The biggest missing link in evolution, except for chemicals to living things.
Well, and actually, we're closing that gap all the time.
Yeah.
Because it turned out that Wose's 3 domains idea was wrong. Archaea don't constitute a monophyletic clade. It's actually paraphyletic with regard to eukaryotes. So you have like Euryarchaeota, and then you have a group called DPAN, which is an acronym for all the different groups I don't remember offhand. And then you have another one called TAC, which you get TACK, not TAQ, which is Thermus aquaticus, which is a bacterium. You have the TAC clade, which is more closely related to eukaryotes. And now we have the entire Asgard Archaeota, which are a bunch of like eukarya in some phylogenies nest within the Asgard Archaeota. So like Thor Archaeota, Heimdall Archaeota, Loki Archaeota, these are actually the closest living Archaean relatives to eukaryotes. So like that gap, and they have these like vesicle transporter genes and stuff that like is really eukaryote like. So we're getting progressively closer as we scour more and more of the Earth, and find more and more Archaeans. We're closing that gap quite a bit.
Yep. A Goop 23 for $5 says normal cells are weak to fighting type cells, but immune to ghost type cells. I did actually know this. That is good information to have. Yep. Did you know about this?
I do now.
Jackson, please tell me you get that.
Pokemon? I don't know.
Yes, it is Pokemon.
Okay. Whew. All right.
Here we go.
The biggest link in evolution that's missing is the jump from prokaryotes to eukaryotes. In other words, from
It's not even really missing at this point.
Yeah.
Like we've more or less figured this out. Are we going to find a fossil for this? Yeah, probably not.
Probably not.
Individual cells don't tend to fossilize very well. But
yeah, and you even have to recognize that, like, and I know Charles Jackson's not going to mention this, but like prokaryotes, the idea of prokaryotes that we had when Lynn Margulis was like writing the endosymbiotic theory was way different than what we know about them now. We know that there are some like Nostoc and Anabaena, these cyanobacteria that are capable of like what I would consider multicellularity, because they can form different types of cells like heterocysts and aconites, that like where you do nitrogen fixation or you act like a storage, or you're just like a normal dividing cell. Like I consider that simple multicellularity.
Sounds
they're
like
doing
it to me.
division of labor. Yeah, they're doing division of labor. There are different groups of bacteria like the Planktomycete phylum that have like intracellular regions that are blocked off from the rest of the cell that basically function as particular regions for doing certain biochemical pathways, which kind of sounds like an organelle to me. I'm not a cell biologist, but that really does sound like an organelle. And then like that happens in different groups. Like I think there are some Archaeans who have that sort of thing also. So it's like how, and then of course like the genes for like elements of the cytoskeleton are in Archaeans, right? So it's not like all the aspects of eukaryotes just came out of nowhere. It's like a lot of them had precursors in prokaryotes because they had to. Just,
right.
That had to be the case. And so, yeah, it wasn't that big of. I mean, there were some things that are extremely different. Like we have more organelles, more types. We have a cell nucleus, things like that. But these are things that largely occurred as a result of the endosymbiotic event, right? But a lot of these things had precursors in prokaryotes. So.
Right. All right, well, we are going to start wrapping things up because I am tired of listening to this amazingly atrocious audio. I have another talk from Charles Jackson that I think is going to be pretty good for the show that I will be downloading. It does have an abrupt end. I did watch through it, so we do have to be aware that it just kind of cuts off in the middle of somewhere. But, I mean, not like he was going to say anything smart in the last part of the talk anyway, so, like, who cares? Kent Long, Halstead of Nantucket, for $4.99. It says, I'm sorry, Jackson, all I heard was bacteria kind.
The one kind of bacteria, true.
Yeah.
There should be like a rule that's like, the further you get from barnyard animals, the more likely things are to be like inclusive in a single kind.
It's so true. Like, I've heard creationists talk about frog kind, and it's like you do realize that there's like about as much diversity among frogs as there is like among therian mammals, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like saying that humans and elephants and shrews and aardvarks and sloths are all in the same kind when you say frog kind.
Or the bacteria kind literally means that you're including organisms that are more distantly related from each other than we are from pine trees.
I mean, technically, if you're going to include archaea in there, you're including humans and pine trees in bacteria kind.
I'm just saying, if you like literally just bacteria, right? If you're just saying like, oh, so the domain bacteria is itself one kind, it's like, okay, so you really can't have a problem with humans, whales,
mushrooms,
and ferns all
pine
being,
trees, ferns,
yeah. Like we are all. You might as well just include all of us too, because we're all more closely related.
Yeah, just all of eukaryotes are now a kind. If you're going to say that bacteria is a kind, like, sorry,
because freaking like cyanobacteria, there's like two different clades. Oh, there was some paper I read a while back that was like there's like hydrobacteria versus pterobacteria, and that's like one of the deepest branches in all of the tree of life. So yeah.
All right, well, Jackson, do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about?
We are trying to rapid fire the last Ancestors Tale video, the last like 8 Ancestors Tale videos.
Oh, so they'll be coming out in the next year and a half or so?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
We just put out the Polypifer's Tale. I was drawing a blank on that word because it's not a word you tend to hear very often.
I don't normally hear it at all, no.
Yeah. So the Polypifer's Tale, we did that one. So we talked about corals. If you like corals, go check that out. And if you don't like corals, we got lots of other animals we talk about in the series, so it's there for you. Next is the Sponge's Tale. That one is written and edited and everything, so it's on to the video making. I finished writing the Coenoflagellate's Tale, which is after that. My editors are hard at work on that right now. I've started writing the next one, which the book jumps in tales from Coenoflagellates, i.e. the sister group to animals, to the cauliflower.
Oh, so fungi not interested in that, huh?
So there's no Philisterians, Ichthyosporians, fungi, amoebozoans, apusomonads, breviata, algae of like any sort.
I would argue that plants are in fact a group of algae, but sure.
Oh, sure, yeah, agree. The Viridiplantae, yeah. And so like, basically, you go, from the sister group of animals, and then the next video will carry us from the sister group of animals all the way to the plants, and in fact, the angiosperms, one of the most derived groups of plants. So yeah, we got a long way to go in that one.
Interesting choice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, what is coming up over on the? Oh wait, first. Rochina, the facticity of Cheese Keller for $4.99 says, how much oxygen do we breathe that isn't ultimately from cyanobacteria? Pretty little.
I think they contribute like 60 to like 70%, something like that. It's an enormous percentage.
Yeah.
Way more than plants.
Yeah, plants are a minority of the oxygen production. Not that they don't matter and that they're not important. It's just
Yeah.
that when people are like, "Oh, we have to save the forest so that you can breathe oxygen," it's more that we need to save the oceans so that you can breathe oxygen.
Yeah.
That's far more important to the oxygen levels. Not that we shouldn't save the forest, because there are also very important reasons to do that.
Correct.
So, all right. So let's see what is coming up here on the channel. First of all, on Thursday, we have the next scripted video. Brian Thomas lies about Archaeopteryx. So do you like hearing me go off about people lying about dinosaurs? If so,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, show up for noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, right here.
Yes.
Then over on Friday on Top Hats Off, I'm going to be assuming everyone can make it, which so far everyone has said that they could make it except for one person, which means we're playing. We should be doing the Star Trek Adventures game that has been delayed for like 2 weeks now. So there's that. That should be at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Then on Saturday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be finishing up the Tower of Babel book written by Bodhi Hodge, the now presumably estranged son-in-law of Ken Ham. So come check that out. That'll be with me and Kip and Vishanti. I think it'll be fun for y'all. It might not be fun for me and Kip and Vishanti because it's real dumb. I want to say thank you. We did get to halfway to the super chat goal, so that's definitely not nothing. So thank you for that. And then on Tuesday we should be back to Kent with Bent, I believe. Which should be Kent with Bent number whatever, Dumb 64. Which yes is based on Doom 64. Because I forgot to do it between Dumb 2 and Dumb 3 because it does go Dumb 2, Dumb 64, Dumb 3, then Dumb 2016. Dumb Eternal, and Dumb the Dark Ages. And I don't know if I'm going to do like Brutal Dumb or like the Dumb RPG or Final Dumb. I'm not sure, right? There's a lot of dumb out there, but
Final Dumbstination.
here you go. That maybe that'll be the next one. All right. Robert Mabel says, "Oh my God, did Bodhi break up with Little Ham?" Man, that was a whole discussion that we had at the beginning of this. You should rewind to the very beginning of this. But with that being said, I'm going to be getting out of here. I'm going to be heading over to my Discord server where we are going to watch 4 episodes of Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel. We are almost done with that season, and then after that, we have one more day to watch it, which will probably be on Saturday. And then after that, we'll be moving on to Beast Morphers. And then from there to Dino Fury. And then from there to Once and Always, and then from there to Cosmic Fury, and then from there to Godzilla. Because we'll be done with Power Rangers. Until maybe Disney Plus actually makes the next season of Power Rangers after the deal with Netflix fell through. Which I don't actually expect to happen. But like, hey, you never know. Alright, bye everybody. Stay safe out there. I hope to see all of you on Thursday for the scripted video. Yeah, have a good day.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Van Tovend, Philgevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek von Mennen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.